Welcome to episode 1 of Demon or Depression. You may enter.
Bless me, Chelsea, for I have been possessed by a demon. Or have I?
Tell me, when did this possession take place?
The year was 1996. Imagine North Florida, panhandle, trees everywhere, super small town, humid, air clinging to everything, um, pine trees abound. The sounds of cicadas accompany the world for ages because it's warm for a very long time in Florida. So I was 12 years old, and at this point in my family, my parents had decided that our family was going to move back to southern Utah. We had lived there for a bit before. We had moved to North Florida. That's where my parents are from, and we were spending time being closer to, especially my mom's side of the family. But my parents realized they kind of preferred the work opportunities and the school and social opportunities for us in southern Utah. So they were planning on our family moving back there. What had happened was my dad got a job, or he had connections still to people who he'd worked with before that had offered him a good job that was better than the job he had currently had in our North Florida town. And they had decided that since we were already all planning on moving there, why don't my dad should just go ahead and start living there, getting established there, maybe find a place for our family. And so he started working in southern Utah while the rest of us lived in Florida. Over the summer, my two sisters ended up moving out there too. What this triggered for me was the realization of how calm things were when my parents weren't together. And as someone who had grown up with the kind of the knowledge that families were so important and that everything should revolve around your family life, but also not realizing how overstimulating and genuinely kind of just a bummer my family life was. I didn't recognize until the absence of half my family, wow, there's a very different energy here. This is also taking place while I've already started puberty. And so my body is changing in lots of different ways. My feelings have intensified in all different ways. And I have friends from different religious backgrounds, all Christian though. So I'm hearing lots of different ideas, both from my own family's religious background and the backgrounds of my family, or of my friends rather, about what could possibly be contributing to all the contention that's in our family and all the tumult I feel within myself. Um, Around this time, though, as I'm realizing my family life is very different when we're not all together, and also then feeling really guilty by how like relieved and how much calmer I feel with my family not being together. And that feeling like a betrayal of how I was supposed to value and find comfort within my family, I was starting to feel really conflicted. I also was having kind of my first experience with like a really big existential crisis. Where I was very much aware of how odd it was that I existed and what did that mean that I existed and how did I come to be and did I really believe the creation stories that I had been taught within my religious upbringing, or was it something else? Did I even believe in God? And I felt really just overwhelmed with all of these thoughts, in addition to trying to process what middle school life was like, and then also trying to reconcile with like my family's new rift and how that was affecting how I felt. I wasn't sure that it was okay for me to be feeling any of these things. And quite honestly, I wasn't sure what I was feeling. All I knew was that at all times I felt like life felt both overwhelming but also not real. That it felt sort of like I was in a movie, but because of how tense I always felt and how much my heart was pounding all the time, I was like, well, that feels pretty real. So this can't be a movie, right? I would talk out loud with my mom and my brother what I was experiencing. And my mom, who's a nurse, would say things like, you just need to release some endorphins. Go for a bike ride. And so I would go for a bike ride, but I couldn't out pedal the way I was feeling. And so I'd come home feeling better for a short time, but it was never very long lasting. Then around the end of the year, one of my sisters came back to help us get the house ready so that we could put it on the market and then our family would move. And then I would be starting the next semester in my new school in a new state. And it was when we were all together, and I at least felt a little bit more comfort of familiarity with having my sister there, that I was able to really talk a little bit more clearly about what I'd been feeling over the last several months and how it had been affecting me. And then my mom became very emotional and was crying, and she'd put on some like nice music from like hymns and stuff from church. And she was crying and was like, for a long time, I was just really worried that maybe there was some sort of negative influence happening, that maybe a demon was influencing you. And golly, I didn't necessarily like feel better. I just felt like I was at a stage where I could talk about what I was experiencing. And then my mom, oh, I also forgot that during this period, my mom told me she had a dream that I had been like possessed by a demon and had been doing really terrible things. And so again, I kind of had all of this happening within my head and within my
Oh,
heart. And then my mom, says that she's worried that maybe there was like the influence of the devil or a demon influence on me. And also my sister too, now that I'm thinking about it, she was saying something along the lines of perhaps we were getting negative influences, my sister and I, because my sister was feeling similar. I at that moment realized that if I wanted to continue being accepted by my family, as chaotic as they were, I needed to shut the hell up about all these thoughts that I was having, because clearly it wasn't really going to be a safe thing for me to talk about. At the time, I genuinely was worried, like, what if this is a demon? Me talking about it probably isn't helping. And if
yeah.
it's a demon, then what I'm supposed to do is like pray and try to invite holy things into my life and invite the influence of the Holy Spirit into my life. And if I can just do those things better, then I'll be okay. And so what I did in that moment, I don't know how consciously I did it, but the decision was made that if you want to stay part of this family, you better just double down on the religious stuff, because whatever this demon is not going to let you be part of this group, and you're going to lose safety there. And so that's what I did. I just doubled down on participating in religion. When I had any existential thoughts or any of those feelings, really worried about life and the nature of it all, worried or questioning anything that had to do with the religious views in my family, I just kept them to myself. Um, I really just put in as much effort as I could into participating as much as possible within church, within religion, within reading scriptures, stuff like that. Um, then later on in my life, I started therapy and I started to learn a little bit more about what was going on in my body in a different way. I learned through all these years of therapy, it led me to talk to a physician about what I was experiencing, because I was learning a lot of really good things within therapy, but I was still having a really hard time achieving any sort of sense of calm in my body. It would take me most of the day before I could feel okay. And by then, I was an adult, and so I'd mostly gotten rid of the idea that it was really a demon, but it definitely wasn't something I fully still understood. And then as I had started this journey with mental health, and then ended up talking to a doctor who had me fill out a questionnaire, I learned that I have generalized anxiety disorder. And I came to realize that occasionally I also experience depression, and that is something that everyone experiences at some point in their life. My brain was just predisposed to be very good at worrying about everything, and then also kind of falling into a state of depression. And so I revisited different parts of my life when I felt similar to what I had been feeling throughout my adulthood with this new framework. And I realized that in the year 1996, it wasn't a demon so much as it was my first experience with depression and anxiety in a major way.
So let me tell you what I'm hearing. You were a young girl who was experiencing family changes that began noticing that she felt different when different environments, when her family wasn't together. And that was in direct conflict with everything that she has been told and taught about families and how important they are. It also happened around the same time you hit puberty. It also happened at the same time where your mom told you about a dream she had that you were getting into trouble and causing mayhem because you were possessed by a demon. That you finally got to a place where you could feel comfortable talking about how you were feeling. And she interpreted that as you being less possessed by a demon. And then you took all of these experiences and were able to collect all these data points of, if I need to get my needs met, and if I want to stay part of this family, I need to double down on these religious practices and beliefs. And if I do that, I'm going to be less likely to get possessed again and expel this demon energy. Then, after years of doing that, and then you become an adult, you started to explore therapy and seeking out other help to make sense of your inner world. And through doctors and therapists and other professionals, you were able to receive a diagnosis about how what was happening metabolically and internally for you. It was generalized anxiety disorder.
Generalized anxiety disorder.
Okay, cool.
Whole thing.
GAD.
Yeah.
Yeah, GAD. And that you did experience some bouts of depression, which are obviously very common for teens and people in puberty. You were able to get some help. You were able to identify your mental models. You were able to make sense of the experiences that you've had, which helped you have a more accurate understanding about your experiences. And how would you say your relationship with this experience is now?
When I think about it, my relationship to this experience now is that I understand better where my mom was coming from. I definitely wish she had made different choices with how she handled everything because it really impacted me, obviously, for a long time. But I also know that she was doing the best she knew how to do and she meant well. But really, like more than anything, my heart goes out to like little me. I just was really, I felt it made me feel really lonely for a long time. It made me feel like, I mean, I was already experiencing a lot of feelings of shame just for other reasons. And so kind of just like led me to feel that even more intensely. Like there probably was something just genuinely wrong with me. But also, it makes me grateful that I was as resilient as I was because obviously I was determined to keep living. And I was finding the way to be able to do that. And so I did what I had to do to be able to meet the moment with the resources I had. Um, so yeah, no, I don't, I mean, now it's funny to think it was demon possession, just in the sense that when you watch, like, I don't watch scary movies, but like when you see trailers for like Amityville Horror and all of those movies about demon possession, or even like The Exorcist, I wasn't like, my head wasn't rotating 360 degrees. I wasn't barfing really hard. I wasn't
Yeah,
levitating, you know what I mean? And so
yeah,
it's funny to be like, wait, what? We thought me having doubts and an existential crisis and heightened anxiety was demon possession.
yeah,
It's like kind of funny to me how ridiculous that is.
yeah, yeah,
And so I'm just grateful that I experienced it. I'm very grateful that that's done, that I made it through that experience.
yeah,
And I'm grateful that I have a new framework now, and that I am to a point where I think, like I said, more than anything, I just think it's funny that if
yeah,
anyone, honestly, if anyone met me And you saw like what a huge dork I was when I was that age. You would never ever look at that girl and be like, demon, demon right there. The demon was puberty. The demon was anxiety. The demon was all the self-doubt that comes as you're that age and you're kind of confronting the world in a new way. But it was
Yeah,
definitely not any extraterrestrial or paranormal
yeah,
experience at all.
thank goodness. It's so funny to see how once we have I'm just hearing so much compassion for yourself and then also for your mom too. I think one of the things that I want to like applaud you for is that sometimes, and this is where I was, and my parents can tell you all the crazy stories that I put them through once I started like going back and exploring different experiences in my childhood. I was so angry. Like I would get so angry at my parents and I would get so angry at even my ancestors, like my grandparents and great grandparents, for making the choices that they did, because I was like, if they just would have made a different choice, then I would have been so different and I would have done X, Y, and Z. And it just kind of fell into like this victimhood. But I feel like the way that you, or the approach of, that you're at now, is not necessarily, and it's not to say that like anger isn't part of your process or like anything like that, but it's more of, you can get to a spot after you move through all the emotions, so like the first like either anger, resentment, or bitterness, or whatever it is, pick your flavor, and get to a place where you're like, you know what, but I have the responsibility to like update my mental models and actually figure out what's happening. I
Mm.
have like the responsibility to like understand and get to know my body the best way that I can and get it the help that it needs in order for me to feel more balanced and not possessed.
Yes.
Yeah, which kudos to you for doing that.
Thank you. I would say if you talk to my mom, um, she would very quickly point out that I am probably her sassiest kid. So she doesn't necessarily, she wouldn't necessarily agree that I'm like super
Oh, my parents don't
compassionate.
either.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she wouldn't necessarily agree she's super compassionate. And I'm sure if we heard her side of the story, it'd be different. But
Yeah.
that is where, that is kind of where I'm at with everything now.
I love it. Well, thank you for coming into the confessional today, Casey. Anything, any other confessions to leave on this episode?
Um, I would say the other confession or the only other thought that I have is sometimes a feeling will be very scary, especially when you're worried what the reality or truth of it might be.
Mhm.
But I feel like it is worth exploring
Mhm.
because sometimes what you think is a demon is really something else completely, and you're probably fine.
It's like, I mean, we've talked a lot about this, but you bring up Scooby-Doo or like Nancy Drew a lot. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, this is where, if this were an episode of Scooby-Doo, this is where we would have caught the swamp creature and then we pull off the mask and it's not actually a swamp creature, it's like Old Man Higgins or whatever. It wasn't a demon. We caught the demon, we pulled off the mask, and it actually was anxiety. It was depression. It was puberty. It was a family changing family environment.
Yeah. Well, we got you. We got you, anxiety, depression, puberty, and got you all red-handed.
Exactly. So now we can, send them away and drive off in our little mystery machine. On to the next possession.
On to the next possession. Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks, Casey. See you all next time.
Bye.
Bye.